Forget skill, intelligence, or hard work. The real MVP of history is pure, dumb, cosmic luck. We are talking about 32 people who should be nothing more than an obituary footnote but somehow walked it off. Prepare for the most insane, absurd, and downright unbelievable roll call of survivors ever compiled. Get ready for a dose of weird history that defies all logic. 1. In 1891, James Bartley's whaling trip near the Falkland Islands went sideways when a massive sperm whale smashed his boat. Bartley was thrown into the freezing sea and, in an instant, was swallowed whole. The next day, the crew caught the very same whale. As they began the gruesome process of butchering it on the deck, they noticed some faint movement inside its stomach. What? They sliced it open and, to their sheer disbelief, pulled out Bartley, alive but thoroughly marinated. He had spent over 15 hours being pickled in whale gastric juices. His skin was bleached a ghostly, unnatural white, and he was blind for a period, but he survived the ordeal. While some historians treat this as an over-the-top sailor's yarn, the legend of a man surviving a night inside a sperm whale became the ultimate, disgusting, and lucky nautical fairy tale. 2. Statistically, this is arguably the most absurd fact on the entire list. Ann Hodges, from Sylacauga, Alabama, holds the 1 in a billion title, the only person officially confirmed to be hit by a space rock. In November 1954, she was simply taking a nap on her couch when an 8.5-pound meteorite tore through her roof. It bounced off her giant console radio, a detail that is weirdly specific, and then slammed into her hip. She survived with a truly impressive pineapple-sized bruise. Imagine a fragment of an asteroid traveling for millions of years through the cold cosmic void, only to end its journey by giving a sleeping woman a nasty contusion while she watches television. It is the universe's idea of a targeted yet ultimately harmless practical joke, proving that even outer space has a weird sense of humor. 3. World War I. Pilot E.S. Lawrence earned the nickname Lucky with physics-defying absurdity. During an intense dogfight, his plane clipped a German aircraft, sending both pilots spiraling towards certain death. Lawrence was violently ejected from his cockpit, but instead of falling into oblivion, he landed with impossible precision on the tail wing of the very same German plane he had just hit. This is peak cartoon logic. The stunned German pilot, now dealing with a suddenly unwanted British passenger, somehow managed to make a rough crash landing. Both pilots survived the impossible mid-air catastrophe, and Lawrence was immediately taken prisoner. Not only did he avoid a fiery death, but he did it with the unnecessary acrobatic flair of a man trying to catch a moving train at the very last second. 4. Harrison O'Keefe, a tugboat cook, was trapped in a deep-sea nightmare for nearly 72 hours. His ship capsized and sank 100 feet to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. While 11 of his crewmates drowned, O'Keefe was incredibly fortunate to be washed into a small office bathroom that contained a 4-foot air pocket. In absolute darkness, freezing cold water, and with only a single can of Coke, he sat on an overturned box and listened to the terrifying sounds of marine life doing what marine life does to the bodies of his dead friends just outside the door. When the rescue divers finally reached the wreck, they were only there on a grim body recovery mission. Picture the horror and shock when a diver, inspecting the dark, sunken hulk, suddenly felt a hand reach out and firmly grab his arm. O'Keefe's survival in that underwater tomb is a terrifying 1-in-a-million miracle of air, will, and a small office space. 5. In 1945, a B-25 bomber, lost in a dense fog, slammed directly into the 78th and 79th floors of the Empire State Building. Elevator operator Betty Lou Oliver was on the 80th floor and was thrown from her car by the explosion. Rescue workers, trying to get her to safety, put her in another elevator. Plot twist: the cables on that elevator, damaged in the crash, snapped. Betty Lou then plunged 75 stories straight down. Her luck wasn't just bad, it was catastrophically absurd. However, this is where physics decided to give her a pass. The 1,000 feet of severed cable had fallen first, coiling into a dense, springy, metal cushion at the very bottom of the shaft. The falling car landed on this massive steel spring, and she survived, suffering only injuries. She holds the Guinness World Record for the longest survived elevator fall, an unrepeatable miracle of mechanical failure creating an emergency trampoline. 6. Meet Frane Salak, the Croatian music teacher whose entire life was essentially a series of rejected Final Destination screenplays. His streak of absurdity began in 1962 when his train derailed into an icy river and he survived. A year later, he was sucked out of a malfunctioning airplane door and landed in a haystack, while 19 others perished. Then, his bus skidded into a river. 2 of his cars burst into flames on separate occasions. He was hit by a bus. Finally, his car went off a 300-foot cliff, but he was ejected and managed to cling to a tree while his car exploded far below. After 7 unbelievable brushes with the Grim Reaper, the universe seemingly gave up. At 73, he bought a lottery ticket for the first time in 4 decades and of course won nearly $1 million. He is proof that if you survive enough absurdity, you eventually get a massive cash payout. 7. British soldier John Starks was about to have the worst day of his life. Condemned to death by a firing squad for desertion during the Napoleonic Wars, he was standing before the aimed rifles. Just as the executioner was about to give the final order, a friend who came to witness the execution stepped forward for one last final handshake. This was no quick greeting. It was a long, drawn-out, emotional farewell. In that exact agonizing moment, a rider was spotted galloping over the horizon, furiously waving a piece of paper. It was a last-minute pardon from the Duke of York. Had that heartfelt farewell handshake been even 1 second shorter, the order to fire would have been given, and Starks would be a historical non-factor. He was saved from a volley of bullets by the simple, profound act of saying a proper goodbye at the absolutely most crucial moment. 8. Violet Jessup, an ocean liner stewardess, holds the undisputed title of history's luckiest professional survivor. She had a bizarre habit of taking jobs on ships doomed to catastrophic failure. First, she was working on the RMS Olympic in 1911 when it collided with a British warship. She survived. A year later, she took a job on its brand-new, allegedly unsinkable sister ship, the RMS Titanic. She survived that disaster in a lifeboat. Did she quit the sea? Nope. During World War I, she worked as a nurse on the third sister ship, the HMHS Britannic. In 1916, it was sunk by a German mine in under an hour. And yes, Violet survived that one too. Seriously, if you ever invent a time machine and see this woman booking a cruise ticket, you should immediately cancel your entire vacation plans and maybe just take a bike ride instead. 9. In 1972, 22-year-old Serbian flight attendant Vesna Vulovic was performing her duties when a briefcase bomb ripped her plane apart at 33,000 feet. She was strapped into a section of the fuselage that plummeted towards the earth. This is the part where everyone dies, but not Vesna. This metal coffin she was in landed at an impossibly perfect angle on a heavily snow-covered, densely wooded mountainside in Czechoslovakia. The deep snow and the trees cushioned the impact just enough to absorb the shock. She was found by a local villager who, unbelievably, had been a medic during World War II and knew exactly how to keep her alive until help arrived. She woke up from a coma with zero memory of the catastrophic fall, and her first recorded words were reportedly a request for a cigarette. She survived the highest fall without a parachute ever, becoming a walking, talking defiance of gravity and proving that sometimes even physics has an off day. 10. Surviving one atomic bomb is a statistical anomaly that should never happen. Surviving 2 is a cosmic event with a terrible dark punchline, and Tsutomu Yamaguchi was the punchline's star. In August 1945, this 29-year-old engineer was on a business trip in Hiroshima when the Little Boy bomb dropped. He was just under 2 miles away. The blast ruptured his eardrums and left him with severe upper body burns, but he was alive. Naturally, he did what any rational person would do. He took a train back home to Nagasaki the very next day. While he was in the middle of describing the massive, terrifying mushroom cloud to his entirely disbelieving boss, the second atomic bomb, Fat Man, exploded. Again, he was in the blast radius. And again, he survived. Yamaguchi lived to the ripe old age of 93, the ultimate absurd testament to one man's defiant, stubborn refusal to be vaporized by humanity's most destructive weapons. 11. Maggie Dixon's story is fantastic proof that sometimes sheer incompetence can be a lifesaver. Back in 1724 Edinburgh, Maggie was convicted of a crime and sentenced to death by hanging. The execution was carried out with all the due grim ceremony. She was strung up, dangled for the required time, and a doctor officially declared her dead. Her body was sealed in a wooden coffin and loaded onto a cart for the short ride to the graveyard. On the way, however, the people transporting her heard a strange, alarming banging sound coming from inside the coffin. They pried it open and found Maggie, very much alive and probably demanding to know what all the fuss was about. Because her sentence was to be hanged until dead, and that sentence had technically been carried out, Scottish law at the time couldn't execute her again for the same crime. She was legally free to go and lived another 40 years as half-hanged Maggie, thanks to the worst executioner in history. 12. Peter Freuchen was a 6'7" Danish explorer who treated the frozen Arctic like his personal playground. But one day, the playground decided to fight back. During a terrible blizzard, he dug a small hole for shelter, only to be instantly trapped when an avalanche of snow and ice froze solid as concrete, completely sealing him in. His tools were out of reach, and he was facing a slow, frozen, suffocating death. So, Peter did what any truly desperate yet resourcefully insane survivalist would do. He defecated, waited for the intense Arctic cold to freeze it into a sharp, solid tool, and used his new poop dagger to chisel his way out of the ice. If that wasn't absurd enough, he later had to self-amputate his own frostbitten, gangrenous toes, using nothing but a pair of pliers and pure Viking grit. This man's life was an insane survival movie that would never get past the ratings board. 13. Timothy Dexter was an American businessman in the 18th century who was fantastically, unbelievably unintelligent and should have died destitute. His wealthy rivals, hoping to ruin him, were constantly feeding him the most preposterously terrible investment advice. They advised him to ship warming pans, used to heat beds in freezing New England, to the sweltering tropical West Indies. A truly moronic idea, right? But he did it anyway. The locals found the long handles were perfect for ladling molasses, and he made a massive, absurd profit. Next, they told him to ship coal to Newcastle, the global capital of coal production, as a sarcastic joke. Dexter did it, and his ship arrived exactly in the middle of a massive miners' strike, allowing him to sell his completely unnecessary coal at an utterly astronomical price. This man literally failed upwards so hard he broke the entire global economic system. 14. In the deadly, backstabbing political snake pit of the Roman Empire, a perceived weakness was a fast track to the nearest grave or a cup of poison, unless you were Claudius. Plagued by an intense stammer, a noticeable limp, and various nervous tics, he was completely dismissed and seen by his family, especially the paranoid psycho-emperor Caligula, as nothing more than a harmless, embarrassing fool. While other more ambitious members of the imperial family were systematically being exiled, executed, or poisoned during intense power struggles, Claudius was totally ignored. He was the running family joke, not a threat. Then, in 41 AD, Caligula was assassinated. The Praetorian Guard, frantically searching for a new emperor, found Claudius literally hiding, trembling, behind a curtain. They didn't kill him. They instantly proclaimed him emperor on the spot. His entire life of being utterly and totally underestimated became the ultimate, life-saving, dumb stroke of luck. 15. Wenceslaus I, the 10th century Duke of Bohemia, was known as a pious, good-natured, and extremely routine-oriented ruler. So good, in fact, that his power-hungry younger brother, Boleslav the Cruel, decided to have him assassinated. A group of assassins lay in wait for Wenceslaus right outside the church, planning to ambush him on his way to his morning service. It was a flawless plan with no security. But on that particular crucial morning, Wenceslaus, a man of unshakable routine, did something entirely out of character. He overslept. The assassins, after waiting for a while and seeing no sign of their target, eventually got totally bored, figured he wasn't coming, and simply wandered off home. Wenceslaus's life was saved not by a premonition or his guards, but by the simple, glorious act of hitting the snooze button. It turns out, sometimes the best personal defense system in the entire world is just good old-fashioned laziness. 16. The odds of being struck by lightning in your entire life are roughly 1 in 15,300. So, allow us to introduce you to Roy Sullivan, a U.S. park ranger who somehow became the personal, mortal enemy of the Greek god of thunder. Roy was struck by lightning not once, not twice, but an officially recorded, completely unbelievable 7 different times between 1942 and 1977. He was hit while driving his truck, while in a lookout tower, while standing in his own front yard, and even while innocently fishing. The strikes set his hair on fire, blew his shoe clean off his foot, and left him with numerous severe burns. He eventually became deeply convinced that some supernatural, malicious force was actively trying to kill him, and honestly, who could argue? For years, he carried a can of water with him everywhere he went, just in case, earning him the terrifying and very factual nickname, the Human Lightning Rod. 17. While every other soldier in World War II was armed with modern machine guns and tanks, British officer John Churchill, better known as Mad Jack, thought that was all a bit too mainstream and, frankly, boring. His signature weapons of choice were a traditional Scottish broadsword, a longbow, and bagpipes. This was not a joke. He holds the bizarre, official credit for the last recorded longbow kill in wartime, taking out a German NCO in 1940. He once captured 42 German soldiers and an entire mortar crew armed only with his sword, literally demanding their surrender. He would signal his own troops to charge by playing a terrifying, out-of-place blast on his bagpipes. His personal motto was, and I quote, "Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed." The fact that this man survived the entire conflict is the ultimate testament to the idea that sometimes, being totally and unbelievably unhinged is the most effective form of personal body armor. 18. Some people like collecting vinyl records. Dutch professional cyclist Martin de Jonge apparently collects near-death experiences with Malaysia Airlines. In March 2014, he was scheduled to fly on the now infamous flight MH370, the one that vanished without a trace over the ocean. At the last possible minute, he found a slightly cheaper flight that didn't have a long, annoying layover, so he switched. A few months later in July, he was booked to fly on flight MH17. Just before leaving for the airport, he decided, again, to save a few €100 and swapped his ticket for a different flight, leaving a few days later. MH17 was shot down over Ukraine, killing everyone on board. Twice in 5 months, this man's extreme frugality saved his life. He literally dodged 2 of the 21st century's most horrific air disasters, simply because he was a ridiculously savvy, penny-pinching shopper. I bet his next life insurance premium was interesting. 19. Andrew Jackson, the 7th U.S. president, was a man so legendarily tough he earned the nickname Old Hickory. In 1835, that brutal reputation was put to the ultimate test during the first ever presidential assassination attempt. A disgruntled house painter named Richard Lawrence approached Jackson and fired a pistol at him from point-blank range. Click, misfire. As Lawrence pulled out a second pistol, Jackson, being the absolute madman he was, charged the assassin with his cane, despite being 67 years old. Lawrence fired the second pistol. Click. Another misfire. The odds of 2 separate, properly loaded pistols failing to fire due to the day's humidity were later calculated to be a mind-boggling 1 in 125,000. It seems that even the volatile black gunpowder was too terrified to function properly in the enraged presence of Andrew Jackson. 20. The Halifax explosion of 1917 was the single largest man-made blast in the entire pre-atomic era, a catastrophic event that instantly flattened a colossal chunk of the Canadian city. In the middle of this apocalypse was a British sailor named Charles Mayhew, who was standing on the waterfront when the world detonated. The shockwave launched him like an actual human cannonball, sending him flying an estimated 2 kilometers, that's over a mile, through the air. The sheer force ripped every single shred of clothing from his body. He eventually landed, completely naked and dazed but miraculously alive, in a far-off field on the other side of the harbor with only surprisingly minor injuries. Imagine having to explain that series of events to a medic. You didn't just survive the explosion. You took an involuntary, terrifying, and utterly naked scenic flight to get away from the immediate aftermath. 21. When you jump out of a plane, you worry about the parachute failing or a bad landing, not about being taken out by a cosmic sniper attack. But for Norwegian parachutist Anders Helstrup, that almost became his reality. During a routine jump, something dark and rocky zipped past his head at an incredible, impossible speed. He felt nothing, but his helmet-mounted camera caught the whole insane thing. It was a meteorite, specifically in its dark flight phase after the visible atmospheric burn had stopped. He had captured the first ever footage of a meteorite falling through the sky from a skydiver's perspective. The odds of this happening are so astronomically small that calculating them is practically pointless. It's one thing to be lucky, but it is another to narrowly dodge a bullet fired from the asteroid belt millions of years ago, proving the universe is not above taking a totally random potshot. 22. The strange, unshakable case of Hugh Williams is less about one lucky person and more about a name that seems to be a cosmic, indestructible life preserver. In 1664, a ship sank in the treacherous Menai Strait off the coast of Wales. The only survivor was a man named Hugh Williams. In 1785, another ship sank in the exact same spot. Again, there was only one survivor, and his name was, unbelievably, Hugh Williams. Then, in 1820, a third, completely separate vessel capsized in the same notorious waters. Once again, everyone perished except for a single man named Hugh Williams. The odds of this triple coincidence are so mathematically impossible that it defies all rational explanation and suggests the presence of some sort of unwritten mystical maritime law. It's as if the ancient sea gods had a single, specific, non-negotiable policy. We will take the ship and all its souls, but we are absolutely leaving Hugh Williams behind. 23. Getting shot once and surviving is a feat of luck. But Wenceslao Moguel's story is an unbelievable act of defiance. During the Mexican Revolution in 1915, he was captured, sentenced to death by firing squad without a trial, and instantly lined up against a wall. A squad of riflemen fired at him 9 times, absolutely riddling his body with bullets. To make completely sure the job was done, an officer then walked up and delivered the classic coup de grace, a final shot to the head at point-blank range. Miraculously, none of the 9 body bullets destroyed his vital organs, and the final headshot passed right through his cheek and out the other side without even touching his brain. He played dead until his executioners left, then crawled away to safety. He lived a long life, even touring with Ripley's Believe It or Not, forever known by the terrifying and very factual title of El Fusilado, the executed one. 24. In May 1902, getting arrested was the single best thing that could have happened to Ludger Silberus. He was thrown into a solitary confinement cell in the town of Saint-Pierre on the island of Martinique for getting into a drunken, embarrassing brawl. A few days later, the nearby Mount Pelée volcano erupted in one of the most cataclysmic explosions of the 20th century. A superheated pyroclastic flow, moving at hundreds of miles per hour, instantly incinerated the city, killing all 30,000 inhabitants. All except one. Ludger's cell was a poorly ventilated, bomb-proof heavy stone box, partially underground, which perfectly shielded him from the deadly heat and toxic gas. He was discovered 4 days later, horribly burned but miraculously alive. He was pardoned for his crimes and later toured with Barnum and Bailey's circus as the amazing living exhibit the man who lived through doomsday. 25. Jean-Bedel Bokassa, the self-proclaimed emperor of the Central African Republic, was a notoriously brutal and eccentric dictator. But even tyrants need a lucky break now and then. During a public appearance, a determined assassin managed to get close enough to throw a live grenade directly at him. The deadly projectile was sailing through the air, about to turn the emperor into a red mist, when pure, mundane fate intervened. A waiter, who was walking nearby, instinctively raised the heavy metal serving tray he was carrying to shield his own face. The grenade bounced right off the tray, flew in a completely different direction, and detonated far away from its intended target, saving Bokassa's life. His continued brutal rule was secured not by his elite, highly trained bodyguard, but by a simple piece of dinnerware. I bet that waiter instantly became the most highly paid man in the entire country. 26. In 1972, King Hassan II of Morocco was flying home on his personal Boeing 727 when his own air force, staging a military coup, tried to shoot him out of the sky. Rebel fighter jets riddled the plane with cannon fire, completely disabling one engine and threatening to tear the entire aircraft apart. As the royal plane began its terrifying, uncontrolled descent, the king realized that brute force wouldn't work, but a massive, humiliating bluff just might. He grabbed the radio and, with astonishing coolness, shouted into the mic in the voice of a panicked crew member, "The tyrant is dead! The tyrant is dead! Long live the homeland!" Believing their mission was a success, the rebel pilots instantly stopped firing. They even saluted the dead king's crippled plane by dipping their wings and escorted the damaged aircraft to a safe landing. He didn't just survive an assassination, he tricked his assassins into being his own personal honor guard. 27. The story of Walter Summerford is so completely bizarre, it sounds like an old sailor's tale, but it is a chilling reminder that lightning, apparently, can hold an eternal deadly grudge. In 1918, while serving as a British major in World War I, Summerford was struck by lightning while on horseback, instantly paralyzing him from the waist down. He thankfully recovered, only to be struck again in 1924 while fishing under a tree in Canada, which paralyzed the entire right side of his body. He recovered again. In 1930, he was hit a third time while walking through a park, which left him permanently paralyzed. He died 2 years later. But the lightning was not done. 4 years after his death in 1936, a lightning bolt struck the cemetery and utterly destroyed his tombstone. The universe didn't just want him gone, it wanted to erase the very memory of him from the face of the earth. 28. If survival were a competitive global sport, King Zog I of Albania would be the undisputed world record-holding champion. This man wasn't just lucky, he made a professional career out of relentlessly dodging death. During his reign, he reportedly survived over a staggering 55 distinct assassination attempts. That number is simply absurd. These were not distant, simple plots either. In 1931, while leaving the Vienna State Opera, assassins ambushed his car. Zog didn't just duck and cover. He immediately pulled out his own personal pistol and returned fire, actively helping his bodyguards fight off the attackers in a desperate street battle. He was a notorious chain smoker, reportedly puffing through 200 cigarettes a day, yet the real constant threat to his health was always other people trying to kill him. For King Zog, assassination attempts were less a terrifying threat and more just a recurring, minor annoyance on his daily royal schedule. 29. In the 11th century, long before Leonardo da Vinci was even born, an English monk named Aylmer of Malmesbury decided he had finally figured out the secret to human flight. He constructed a set of crude, entirely self-made wings, climbed to the top of Malmesbury Abbey, and, with more reckless faith than actual aerodynamic knowledge, leaped fearlessly into the air. Shockingly, it actually worked for a moment. He glided for a remarkable distance of over 200 meters, a length longer than 2 American football fields, before a completely unpredictable gust of wind caused him to lose control and plummet to the ground. He survived the crash but broke both of his legs and was left with a permanent limp. He later lamented that his only mistake was forgetting to add a tail. This man didn't just survive an entirely reckless, bone-breaking experiment. He became one of history's earliest, most successful, and definitely luckiest pioneers of aviation, all while wearing a full set of uncomfortable monk's robes. Being a politician can be dangerous, but for Spanish Prime Minister Adolfo Suarez, the biggest threat came from a hunting trip with a friend. During the hunt, his companion swung his shotgun around to track a bird, accidentally pointing it directly at Suarez's head. The man fired. At that exact split second, a single, unlucky pigeon flew directly between the two men. The bird took the full force of the shotgun blast, instantly exploding in a puff of feathers and saving the Prime Minister's life. It was the ultimate case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time for the pigeon, and the absolute luckiest moment for Suarez. He was saved by a feathered bodyguard he never knew he had, a true Secret Service agent who made the ultimate sacrifice completely by accident. 31. Surviving over 55 assassination attempts is massively impressive, but Fidel Castro looked at that number and essentially said, "Hold my rum." According to his own head of security, the Cuban leader survived over 600 separate plots and conspiracies to kill him, mostly orchestrated by the completely dedicated CIA. And these were not simple attacks. They were a cartoonish catalog of persistent failure. They tried absolutely everything: an exploding cigar, a massive bomb hidden inside a conch shell planted at his favorite diving spot, a fountain pen with a secret hypodermic needle, and even a wetsuit dusted with a flesh-eating fungus. They even sent a former lover to poison him, but she supposedly hid the poison pills in her cold cream jar, where they dissolved before she could act. It seems Castro's greatest, most powerful defense was not his elite bodyguards, but the sheer, almost comical, persistent incompetence of his enemies. 32. J.P. Morgan wasn't just a titan of industry. He was the man who owned the entire White Star Line, the company that had built the magnificent giant Titanic. As its owner, he was naturally scheduled to be on the ship's glittering, highly publicized maiden voyage, occupying one of the most lavish suites. He had his bags completely packed and was ready to go. However, just before the ship was set to sail from Southampton, he abruptly canceled his entire trip at the absolute last minute. The official reason given was a sudden illness, though some persistent rumors suggest he was simply preoccupied with important business or a mistress. Whatever the exact reason, his completely random, last-minute decision saved him from going down with his own unsinkable masterpiece. It is the ultimate example of a wise, powerful boss deciding, at the very last second, to skip the first day at his company's new and extremely flawed workplace. History is clearly not fair. These 32 people didn't earn their survival. They simply got a cosmic pass. From sinking ships and explosions to narrowly dodging a meteorite, their lives were the ultimate lucky draw that defies all logic. Seriously, if you had the chance to meet one of these people, who would you absolutely refuse to shake hands with? Let us know your choice in the comments. Hit that like button if you were shocked by these facts, and subscribe so you don't miss the next dose of unbelievable history.